I appreciate all that have made some time to spend with us here this afternoon. And I think we've got a good presentation for you today. I do want you to know that what we're presenting today is we've thought through the big ideas regarding how school will open next school year, but a lot of the details have yet to be decided. And the reason for that is because we're going to need some information from you, the parents, the students, to complete the planning at the school level. And that's exactly where we should be at this point. At this point, the fact that we can present to you how school will function in general is ideal. And then over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we'll fill in all the gaps and have final plans on August 4th is currently the plan. And you'll get those final plans from your school, not from a presentation like this. But I think at the end of today, you'll feel like you understand how we're going to function this year, and that's the goal. I've got on the call with me behind the scenes Matt Whitlock and Susan Taylor. I'd like to thank them, and I've also got the committee, several of the committee members. We've had over 30 people working on these plans over the last couple months, and several of them are on the call. We've got Chris Holderman and Steve Karshner, Nicole Brown, Katie Ellis, Deanna Paget, Jamie Kendrick, Chris Sloan, David Morris, Bernice Bates. And so they'll help me answer questions when we get to the end. Regarding questions, I have Amy Bugg, who is our new communications director, and Stephanie Wade, who are going to help facilitate question and answer. And so I will let Stephanie and Amy kind of describe how that process will work. Hey, Stephanie, you're muted there.
Just kidding, and I'll help coordinate technology. Thank you all again for joining us. And if you have questions tonight, as you're watching the YouTube, there should be a live chat option. And as long as you're signed in to the live chat, then you can submit questions to us. We're going to do our very best to watch those questions and ask them at the end. We also are taking note of all the comments and questions so that we can go back and have a school official reach out to you if we don't get to answer it tonight. Again, myself and Amy Bugg, our new creative director, will be handling that. So feel free to ask any questions that you have regarding the opening of school.
Very good. We had a board meeting just a few nights ago, and a lot of these items were approved by the board. So this is official. What we're going to present to you now, this is officially how we're going to proceed. And we'll get going. So the first big idea is that what we're going to pursue this year is what KDE's calling the synchronous hybrid. I think the reason they're using that word is because you're trying to sync up the virtual school with the physical school, meaning that there are two robust options for parents and children to choose from. One hopefully just as good as the other. And then we're going to try to pace them to where the virtual school is using the same curriculum, same assessments, much of the same instructional strategies. And we're trying to pace the year to where if students have to move back and forth between the two, we can do that. We're really going to try to have those two synchronized. And that's going to be the way the school year is going to function. You'll have, as a parent, an option between sending your student to the traditional physical school building or a virtual school, and it will not be like NTI. We'll go into that a little bit later. It's going to be us taking the next step, and you'll see what we're talking about a little bit later. But you'll have that as your other option. And we're leaving the option to the parents, to the students. It's not going to be based on a doctor's note. It's not going to be based on you have to have a pre-existing condition. It's going to be based on what you as a parent and what our students feel is best. And we're going to let you all choose. Before we get into many details about the physical school building and the virtual school, let's talk about calendar, because we did make some calendar changes a few nights ago with the board as well. One of them was starting school a little bit later. Nearly all of the 172 school districts in Kentucky are doing this. I've been on the phone with many superintendents over the last couple of weeks. I don't know of a single district not doing it. In fact, some of them are starting as late as September 2nd, but most of them are starting, August 24th, 25th, or 26th. And so when, we haven't formally surveyed you all on the idea of a late start, but we did ask you at the last town hall to give us feedback on it. Most of the feedback we got from you all was very positive on that. And then, the board again voted to do that. So the first day for students will be August the 26th. Now, shortening fall break, we did that so that we could end on the same last day of school. So by making that little adjustment, we were able to end the last day for kids, May 21st, which is what we had originally planned. It does change the number of instructional days to 165. But fall break will only be a long weekend now. It'll be October 8th and 9th, and of course the weekends, the 10th and 11th. We based that on the data. When we surveyed parents, staff, students in the community, this is how you all answered that question. And if you remember from the last town hall, I said to you all that clearly the stakeholders were not in favor of eliminating fall break, but that they were more open to the idea of shortening it. And so when you see this data, you see that very thing. Actually, the majority said, yes, shorten fall break. Only 32% said do not do that. 40% said to shorten it. And then 26 were somewhat undecided. So it depends on how you view that 26%. But we thought at the very least, the stakeholders were saying that's an option, and that's the option we pursued. And if you have questions about the calendar, provide those to Stephanie and to Amy, and we'll get to those at the very end. So now on to the physical school option. So if you choose this as a parent, as a student, if you choose the traditional school, let's talk about how that's going to function this year. The governor in the state of Kentucky put out a guideline document for schools a few weeks ago. And the guideline document is broken into expectations and best practices. Now, when I worked with our board attorney regarding this document, he said, treat the expectations as if they're laws, because they really are. So when you read this document, we're not going to go through it tonight, but we'll have it linked to where you can find it in a survey that we'll get to later. You'll be able to access the KDE document, or it'll be on our website. It'll be easy to access. You'll see in the document that there are things called expectations, and the rest of the slides really are the expectations. That's what it is. And we have to treat those as laws. And then there are best practices, which are suggestions from the state, suggestions from KDE, suggestions from the governor's office, but you don't have to do those best practices. You do have to fulfill the expectations. The expectations basically are social distancing, the wearing of masks, temperature checks, things of that nature. Now, here's how school will begin each day. We're going to do it just a little bit different. I met with the staff this morning, and I told them this is how we're going to do this. So Perryville, depending on where your student is, right, we're going to open all of our schools 30 minutes before the first bell. So Perryville's doors will open at 7:20, and school will begin at 7:50. And the students will go straight back to their classroom. They will not go to a cafeteria or to a gym. They will not be waiting in the hallway. They'll go straight to their homeroom teacher. That's what is being asked of us by the state, and I think that's a good practice in this day and time with what we're dealing with. So you can see that Perryville Junction will open their doors at 7:20, Woodlawn at 7:35, middle school at 7:30, high school at 7:35. There is a change there worth noting. The middle school is now first of the 3 campus schools in rotation, where it used to be Woodlawn. It's now the middle school, because the new middle school will have the buses get there first. Woodlawn will be second in the rotation, and then they'll finish at the high school. So I do ask parents to note that the middle school now starts earlier than Woodlawn. So one of the first expectations in the governor's document was temperature checks, and your student will be checked upon arrival to school. We're still working out the details of how we'll handle the bus. The documents say that we can have you all check your children before they enter the bus. We're debating if that's how we'll play that out. Right now, that is what we plan to do, but we will have staff at the doors when they enter the school check temperatures, which is, again, the expectation. And they'll do screenings for COVID as well, not just temperature checks, but screenings in general. Of course, social distancing is one of the governor and KDE expectations, and social distancing is 6 feet, and that's to be maintained at all times. The rule is if you cannot maintain that 6 feet social distancing, you have to wear a mask. So here we are to masks, and I know that's been a contentious topic, and I know the governor has mandated that in Kentucky starting 5 o'clock today. But it's been a rule for schools for a few weeks now. And so we've been adjusting to that and making plans for that. Basically, anytime you cannot achieve social distancing of 6 feet, or anytime students or staff are moving about the building, they have to wear a mask. Those are the 2 times it has to happen. When you look at our classroom sizes, many of them, we can accommodate the number of students we have and keep 6 feet social distancing. And in those cases, the students, once they get seated, will be able to take their mask off. However, we have some classrooms that will not. They're not big enough. They'll accommodate 15, 16, 17 students, and we might have 23 or 4 students in that class. So in those cases, they would have to leave a mask on the full period. We're going to work over the next month to reduce the number of occurrences where a student has to leave the mask on during the entire period. But I cannot make you any promises that we won't have classes that have to do that, because it's possible. Quite frankly, it'll come down partly to how many of you, the families and the students, pick the virtual school option. The more who pick that option, then the fewer probably times that happens. But again, we're leaving that option for you all to decide. Our goal is to have as few classrooms as possible where students have to wear masks the entire period. We will provide masks to students who need them, by the way, as well, for free. So if you don't have one, we'll do that. If you do have one, though, you can wear your own. Extracurriculars continue on. Now, there was an adjustment today by the KHSAA that kind of suspended some things they were trying to do based on the number of cases in Kentucky going up. So, we have students practice. I watched a football practice last night myself, and so we have practices going on right now, and we plan to have games. That's what we're planning on July 10th, is to have games, and we're planning on having people there watching them. Right now, the guidelines say we can only have 50 people at a game. That counts the student athletes and the coaches. So in that situation, there will be literally no spectators at all. But I listened to Julian Tackett on Tuesday saying his goal is to get to 50% capacity at venues, which would allow, for example, a football game to have probably around 1,500 spectators. So will we get to that point? We'll see, but that's the plan right now. Either way, we plan to expand what we call BCSN, which is the Boyle County Sports Network. And I don't know if you got to watch those guys. Daniel and Jack did a great job this year. There were some other students involved. Michelle Feistretcher is the sponsor of it, and they would live feed a lot of our sporting events. And those guys were awesome. But we want to expand that to 3 teams next year, 3 groups of students doing that, so we can live stream a lot more events on any given night. That's the plan, and so we're moving forward with that. We will teach your students about the safety procedures, about why we're doing what we're doing and what's expected of them. You can see a list here of things that we plan to teach your child, but that will happen at the very beginning of school, those first 3 days, August 26th, 27th, 28th. There will be systematic lessons taught on these items. We are providing transportation again this year. We do encourage parents to drop their students off because bus transportation is going to be tricky. Now, the guidelines have changed on that. When last we spoke, 6 weeks ago, we were going to have to put students every other seat on the bus, which would have been literally impossible to do. And now we don't have to do that. But we are encouraged to try to put children with their own family. It's not mandated you do that. We're allowed to sit children from other families beside each other. We're going to try not to do that unless we have to. But students do have to wear masks on the bus. The driver has to wear masks. So we are encouraging parents, if you can, drop your students off, pick students up. That's what we're encouraging people to do. But there is going to be bus transportation if you need it. Now, one thing I will say about bus transportation before we move on, right now, as we're planning this out, we're only going to be able, this could change, but this is where we are today. So I want to be upfront about this. Is a bit of a difficulty for some parents. I want you to know this. As we're planning this out, we think the way it's going to have to work is there'll be only one address per child that we'll drop off to and pick up to. You won't be able to change like Monday, Wednesday do this and Tuesday, Thursday do this. because we'll have to have such a solid count on every bus for the number of students riding. And when all those adjustments happen every single day, it really creates fluctuation in the number of students riding any given bus. And so that is less than ideal, I realize. But I think right now, unless we can figure a way around that over the next 4 or 5 weeks, that's going to be the reality for bus transportation this year. A few more bus protocols you can see here. The buses will be cleaned after every single route. So we've got, morning, midday, afternoon. We're going to clean them 3 times a day. I mentioned masks. And then, the other big one is we're going to ask parents to actually tell us you need bus transportation by July 24th. So we'll have a good count of who's going to be on those buses. And only those people who tell us they need it will be allowed to use it. That's also a little bit different than in the past. But it's still up to you. If you need it, you can tell us you need it and you're going to be on the list, right? So you still control your destiny on that. We're going to disinfect the school buildings as well, because the coronavirus, unlike other viruses, it hangs around. So, 12 hours between when students leave and before they come back the next day, or it's even a little bit longer than that, 15 hours or whatever it is not enough time for the coronavirus just to go away on its own. So you have to deep clean the building literally every night. And that word deep clean, right? You have to really have specific protocols that you're achieving, and you have to do that every single night. And then any school that has class change, like the high school, middle school, well, first off, I've asked them to try to limit class change as much as possible, and they're thinking through how to do that. But when you have class change, you have to clean those desktops off. You have to disinfect them with the proper disinfectant. So there will be a lot of cleaning that's occurring in the schools. So what happens if your student or a staff member starts showing symptoms? They've got the temperature of 100.4, which is the threshold. They've got that dry cough and the headache and other symptoms that people talk about with COVID-19. So this gives you a little bit of an idea how we'll go about that. The first thing is your child will be sent home if they're symptomatic, and then we would ask for a medical provider to clear them before they come back. And then we hope to test ourselves for COVID-19 at some point. Now, we would ask you before we test your child, certainly. But I think testing will be available in the district at some point in time. We're working very closely with the health department on all of these kinds of things. And speaking of the health department, quarantine decisions will be made by the health department. So I've had people ask me, well, what happens if a 3rd grader at one of the schools has the coronavirus? Well, we'll contact Brent Blevins and his team, and then they'll do contact tracing quickly, and then they'll tell us how many we have to quarantine, right? And it may be fewer than we would think, or it may be the entire class. So I do think we need to be prepared for that, right? There could be a point where a class or a grade level is having to go from the physical school to a virtual school for 14 days and they come back. It could be that, we have to shelter in place a school, but the other 4 schools are continuing on. That's possible. You hope these things don't happen. I mean, what you hope happens is we come and we have either 0 or so few coronavirus cases at Boyle County schools that it's really not a major issue for us. But until you do it, you don't know. And so you have to prepare for all contingencies. We will be working very closely with the health department this year on all quarantine type decisions. I just mentioned shelter in place orders, which that's what we've been under March, April, and May. That one was made by the governor. He could do that again. He could do that before school starts. If he does, then that's what we're doing. The Boyle County Health Department could also make a shelter in place order for us, and we would have to adhere to that. Our district does that sometimes. We'll have a high counts of the flu, and we'll take, a long weekend, 4 days. Now, I don't think the coronavirus, a long weekend is going to do you much. So in this situation, it's probably a longer break than a 4-day weekend. And here's something else that could be different. Typically, we do not do NTI or virtual instruction while we're on a flu break, because the thought is you've got kids at home who are sick. But in this case, we may have to just to keep making traction through the year. Not something we want to do, but it's something we may have to do. This year, more than anything, I think is going to require flexibility from us all. And that may be an example of that. So we'll have to do a few things we haven't done in the past. So before I get to the virtual school option, let me say this. So I know you read those slides and you think, oh man, this is going to be a tough year. And in many regards, I think that's probably true. It's going to be tough. I think we've got great staff here and we can do it and we can pull it off. I think we're as well positioned as anybody there is to pull it off. I think also, though, there's some opportunities. There's some opportunities to take some steps with technology as a school district, your children as well with technology. I think there's opportunities for us to try some instructional approaches that we played around with in the past. We can go further with now because this opportunity kind of presents itself to you to do it. So I think you've got to view it that way, right? You've got to appreciate the difficulty of it so you're prepared, but that you've got to also be positive enough to see the possibilities and the opportunities. And so that's what we're trying to do as a staff. That's what I encourage you to do as a parent. And that's what we're going to encourage our students to do as well. So now getting into the virtual school option. If you choose this, and again, it's a choice a parent can make, but if you choose this slide's all about how we plan to approach instruction. Instructionally, the virtual school will mirror the physical school in terms of curriculum, assessment, pacing, and pedagogical approach. What that means is we don't want it to feel like NTI in the past, where you felt like, I know parents have communicated to me, I feel like I'm being asked to be a teacher. What we want it to feel like for you is that the teacher, who's your child's virtual school teacher, is creating an environment that's very close to the traditional physical school environment, as close as possible. And we want the virtual school and the physical school, the traditional school, to be linked up in such a way to where they're mirroring each other and they're progressing through the year together is how we want that to look. And so we really want to take the burden off of families, and we want to create an environment to where the students are feeling as successful in our virtual school as they have in our physical traditional school building. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to ask the virtual school to have the same hours as the child's traditional school. So you saw that Perryville starts at 7:50 and ends at 2:45. Well, that would be the hours of the Perryville virtual school. So we're going to do everything in our power to make these two mirror each other. Regarding delivery of instruction, of course, the technological tools are critical. We're now one-to-one down to second grade, and we're actually working right now to move that all the way down to kindergarten, to where there's a device for every child in the district all the way down to kindergarten. It's primarily Chromebooks, but down in the K1, it's more iPads. And then if a family does not have internet access, we have bought, I think 400 hotspots that we can turn on for families. And, we're gonna bridge every barrier, every gap there is, so that this is a successful year for every child. So if you have that issue, when you take the survey, identify that's an issue you have, and we'll try to get that help to you. Now, this is a little bit about enrollment. Enrollment in the virtual school, as I said many times, is a choice the family makes, a choice the student makes. The virtual school will be divided into 2 semesters. So we ask that when you make the choice, that you're committing to a semester. That's what we want it to be. And so the first commitment date is July 24th. And you take the survey that's going to come your way after this call today, gives you the opportunity to choose the virtual school or the traditional physical school environment. That commitment is good from August 26th to December 18th. And then you see the second commitment date there. It's good for the second semester. Now, once your students enrolled in either the virtual school or the traditional physical school, they will be automatically re-enrolled in that for the second semester unless you tell us otherwise by the commitment date. Your responsibility is to tell us your intentions by those 2 commitment dates. That's what we ask you to do. Now, if a student makes a request outside of the commitment date, then it becomes an administrative decision. So let's say that you start the school year in the physical traditional school environment, and then in September you say, I'd like to transfer to the virtual school. Well, at that point, the school's principal and there's a district representative, Chris Sloan, those two individuals will make that decision if that request will be granted or not. In the virtual school, parents will be asked to sign a contract. It's part of the survey, actually. And the contract just guarantees that students are committed to completing assignments, they're going to attend daily virtual lessons, and they'll participate in all virtual school activities. Students enrolled in the virtual school will be eligible to participate in extracurricular activities. Now, that's a change. If you'd asked me 6 weeks ago, I'd have said that probably wouldn't be how it played out. But we've worked with the Kentucky High School Athletic Association, and this is the proper way to handle the virtual school, so they will be allowed to participate. Once again, the schedules will mirror each other. If your child needs meals, they'll be provided to students in the virtual school. You can fill that out in the survey as well. And they will be offered via pickup at various sites throughout the community. And I don't know exactly how that works, but I think it's going to be once a week and you get a week's worth of food, I believe is how that's going to work. You know, one of the things I think that we do, you know, I'm bragging on us a little bit. I think we do lots of things well in Boyle County schools, but one of them is certainly exceptional child services. Those will continue whether you're in the virtual school or the traditional physical school. Academic support, speech therapy, counseling, mental health, gifted and talented, all those services you see listed there will continue on. The next slide talks a little bit about AP classes because we've had questions about that. AP classes will be the one of a few examples that will be live streamed. We're trying not to create live stream classes. In other words, we don't think it's the best environment to have 23 kids in a physical classroom and then have a camera and then you're sitting at home watching what your peers are doing. And then that's considered, you know, your instruction. However, AP may have to be done that way because there's just, you don't have enough teachers to teach those classes over and over and over. So we may have to live stream AP and dual credit and career and technical and STEM. There's a few areas we'll have to live stream. We're purchasing very elaborate equipment to pull that off at the highest level. And those are a few examples of where we'll live stream. Otherwise, what the virtual school is going to be is you'll have a teacher. Now it's still going to be some live streaming, but the teacher won't have the responsibility. Our hope is the teacher won't have the responsibility of kids in both environments simultaneously. We're going to try to limit that as much as possible. So a little bit of additional information here before we get to your questions. We're almost finished. So as I've talked about the survey, it's due by July 24th, and it'll be available to you this afternoon. And it's got several commitments, you know, the virtual or physical school commitment, the transportation preference, the food service, do you need technology, all those different commitments. Very important to us that you take that survey as quick as possible. We think back to school events will be, will look differently, but they'll continue on, but they may be virtual. We don't know how those look yet, but certainly I do think they'll look a little bit different. Now, since the start of school is a little bit later and we've had people vacationing, so we've decided to continue to work from home just due to the fact we want to get off to a great start on August 26th. And, you know, just in case somebody who was vacationing came back with it, we wouldn't want to spread across our office and really infect our planning. So we'll be in our physical locations on August 3rd, central office, as well as the schools. You see the schedules there. You can still call us at any time, and we do have a person in the central office every day, or a couple people every day. But as far as the school's opening, it's August 3rd. If you got questions about schedule pickup and that kind of thing, if you can wait till August 3rd, that's ideal. So maybe really make a note of August 3rd is the date we get going at central office in the schools. that's the presentation. I know you've got questions. Hopefully I've got answers, and then I've got some team members with me today. If I can't answer it, I'm confident they can. And if none of us can, we'll make note of it and get back to it, back to you with it as soon as possible. So Stephanie and Amy, what's the first question?
Hey, Mike, we've had lots of really good questions. You actually have answered several of them as we've presented, so that's been great. Amy, I'm going to let you go ahead if you'd like. And we had several questions about masks. So Amy, do you want to go ahead and ask those questions?
Sure. Thanks, Stephanie. Mike, folks are wondering what types of masks are permitted. Can clear face shields be worn? And then what if a student has asthma or another condition and is unable to wear a mask? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I know that there are in the guidance documents, there is a waiver for children who cannot wear masks. I would say if your child has asthma and they can't wear a mask, you know, I would say that's something to really think through. Is there a mask they can wear? Because it's for their safety. It's also for the safety of others, but it's really for their safety, particularly for a child with asthma, I would think. But there is a waiver that you can seek. And if you contact Nicole Brown, and Nicole's on this call, she could give you some guidance regarding how to pursue that waiver. As far as what kind of mask to wear, you know, there are some documents out there about what's more effective. I know bandanas, for example, not effective at all. We're looking into the gaiters right now. You know, can you kind of pull them up? You want something that's breathable. These polyester masks are not very breathable, and so could the student keep them on all day? Maybe not, or a large part of the day when they need to. So I do think some thought needs to be put into that. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to purchase masks that we think are going to be very effective for the students, but certainly they're welcome to bring their own as well. Nicole Brown, anything you want to add about masks?
Hi, yeah, no, I think you did a great job, Mr. LaFavors. That's correct. If you think your child has a health condition that warrants them not being able to wear a face covering face mask, then email me. We can talk about what we can do to help you out. Your student still may be asked to wear a face shield in the event that they do get a waiver, you know, but feel free to email me with specific and individual questions there. But I think we've about covered it, and we are looking into the gaiters and possibly for the younger children.
Very good.
Thank you both. Some folks are wondering whether the school will provide disposable masks or cloth masks. And if we provide cloth masks, will we keep them at school and wash them each evening?
Well, we're planning to provide cloth masks, not disposable. And we haven't talked through that variable. I think the discussion so far has been that it would go home, you know, it would belong to the child and it's the child's responsibility. We haven't talked that through. Maybe we make note of that and discuss that in more detail. But I think the discussion has been around that once we give it to you, it's your responsibility to hang on to it.
Great, thank you. What about repercussions for not wearing masks or students who take them off during the day?
Yeah, so I mean, my goal, and I've communicated that to all the leaders in the district, is that I don't want it to be punitive, especially not right off the bat. I want us to do what we always do with our students, which is explain. Anytime we've got something important that we want our students to understand or to implement, we explain that to them. We teach them not just the practice of how to do it, but the reason for why to do it. And what I've learned about our students in Boyle is they rise to the expectations. I mean, that's how we become, you know, so strong academically, is we've been able to express to them learning content and standards and skills is not just good so that you can pass a test in the immediacy of it, but also what that's going to do for your future. So our students are accustomed to us talking to them that way. And that's how I think it will, you know, we'll proceed with it. Now, you know, younger students, it's going to be harder, and we've got to be patient. And that's my expectation. Let's teach the students, let's be patient. And I think that's going to be the most effective approach.
Thank you. Again, we have lots of great questions. Our next set of questions that we're receiving are questions about lunch. And will the cafeteria times and lunch times be expanded so that more kids get the opportunity to go eat in the cafeteria?
Yeah, lunch is going to be a difficult one because, teachers get a duty-free lunch, and so we have to think through how to supervise that. I think that the two ways we're going to have to go about it will be to expand the lunch time, and then maybe the space where the cafeteria space. We're going to have to find unique, creative ways of where students can eat their lunch. But not put the burden on the teacher, because by law we can't. So I think that's what it's going to be. Now, what happens on Monday? I've got an elementary school meeting in the morning with all the elementary school principals, and we're going to take one of their schools and we're going to play a day out from beginning to end. Because again, what we've been trying to achieve so far are these big ideas, right? How we're going to proceed in terms of the virtual school and the physical school. That was a big decision. The calendar was a big decision. And then the physical school, how do you implement masks, and what are the things you have to implement masks and social distancing and temperature checks. And so now we've got to get into the weeds. We got to get into all the fine details, and we're going to begin that on Monday. And we have planning meetings twice a week until August 4th. And on August 4th, we'll have all these details ironed out. And then you'll hear about those from your school. So yeah, there are some details we're still working through, but we do have plans for how to do that.
Thank you, Mike. What about, you mentioned breakfast, and we've gotten a few questions about, you mentioned lunch and breakfast there, but will breakfast be an option, or what will they need to do?
We've got Katie Ellis on the call, and Katie Ellis is our food service director, and she's been part of this committee and in charge of the food service part of it. And so I'll let her talk to you about her thoughts on how breakfast would work.
Thank you, Mr. LaFavors. We are excited to be implementing both a combination of breakfast in the classroom, which would mean the students would arrive at school, have their temperatures checked, and go to their classroom and be served breakfast there, and have grab and go stations available so that they can pick up breakfast and take it straight back to the room. Part of that's going to depend on the way that students enter the building and the culture of the school, so that will look a little bit different at each site, but we certainly do want to continue to make that available to all of our students and to offer the foods that they have become accustomed to.
Very good, Katie. Thank you for that.
All right, now we kind of start getting into several instructional specific. We have a lot of questions about substitutes. Will we be utilizing substitute teachers this year?
Oh yeah, definitely. It will have to. I mean, I think we'll have to use substitute teachers maybe more than ever. So, they'll be really an important part of what we're doing, and training them so that they understand the practices we put in place is going to be a key element as well.
Hey, Mike, this is Amy. Will there be nurses in the schools all day, every day?
We've got Nicole Brown on the call. She's our health coordinator for the district. I'll let Nicole chime in on that.
Hi, yeah. We actually have 4 nurses right now, and the way that it's looking is that Woodlawn, the middle school, and the high school will have their own nurse, but Junction and Pearville will have to split a nurse for half a day at this point.
Thanks, Nicole. Could y'all talk a little bit about outside visitors in the schools, what the first day of school will look like? If you need to check your student out, can you come have lunch with your student?
Those are great questions. And what we're trying to do is simplify the school year in terms of the number of, outside contacts students will experience. I think everybody can understand why we're trying to do it that way. We've got Steve Karshner on the call. He's been working with the 5 principals on how to get the school year started and how some of these things would work out. Steve, anything you want to add in terms of your meeting with the 5 principals?
I don't know that I have any different information than what you just said. The principals are really looking at their practices, limiting numbers of people in the office at one time, But yeah, you'll still have access to your child if you need it. We're just really trying to work out the details. You may have to call ahead and say, hey, I'm here, admit you in. We'll still have to practice all the protocols that are in many businesses you go in today.
Okay, thank you, Steve and Mike. And I think this one will also go along with possibly Chris Holderman. Steve may have more information, but there were several questions about parent notes and about students who exhibit symptoms, and will anything be changed with the attendance policy or truancy? So any of you gentlemen or maybe Deanna want to elaborate on that?
Stephanie, can you hear me? This is Deanna.
Yes, we can hear you now, Deanna.
Awesome. Hey guys, so myself and Mr. Holderman and Mr. Sloan have discussed this extensively. At this time, there is not a change to the attendance policy. However, the guidance we received from KDE indicates that, COVID-related absences are COVID-related absences that won't require a parent note or a doctor's note. And this year, the real, and like Mr. Lefevre said, the real focus this year is on participation versus attendance. So it's important that your students, in order to receive, the best educational experience possible in today's circumstances, are actively participating, and that's our top priority.
All right.
Thanks, Deanna. Will teachers be tested prior to August 26th?
The guidelines, it's a best practice, not an expectation. So you don't have to do it, but the idea is that you test 10% of your staff weekly. And we're talking right now about how we can implement that. I'm not making any guarantees right now that we can. We're talking through how that might be implemented. I've not seen anything suggesting that you should test all your staff before you get started. I understand the logic behind it. And we'll make note of that. Susan Taylor, let's make note of that as we talk about the 10%. Best practice, let's also talk about, should we try to do that before school starts for all staff?
Thank you. And will you elaborate a little bit more on if a teacher or a student tests positive, who will be required to quarantine, who makes that decision, kind of how will that happen?
Yeah, so you can imagine if you've got a third grade student in the district who does test positive, what we would do is contact Brent Blevins, and then he and his team would quickly do contact tracing. They've got some specific protocols that they have to look at, and they'll make some determinations and tell us which students and how long, and then we'll follow their guidelines. So really, that one is out of our hands. It's more of us collaborating with and cooperating with the health department, which we intend to do.
All right, great. We're getting several questions that are probably specific to any classroom that's not self-contained. So middle school, high school, some of our intermediate grade levels. Can you talk to us a little bit about whether students will change classes, whether they'll get to go to their specials classes, or will they be in one classroom?
Yeah, so again, we're just starting to work through what a class schedule will look like, but obviously you want to change classes as little as possible. But our students will get their specials. I think there's no question in my mind that at the physical traditional school, we're going to want the specials to happen. How you make that happen is the question right now, right? I think Bernice Bates was on the call. I don't know, Bernice, if I know we haven't gotten to those meetings yet, but Bernice, any thinking you have about how 4th and 5th grade would work?
We're still working on that. A lot of it kind of depends upon how many students and families choose the physical school. So there is definitely an option to where kids could change the classes, but there also might be an opportunity where the teachers rotate instead of the students. That's still kind of up in the air. We're still trying to make plans. Again, that's very contingent upon physical versus virtual.
So I'll just repeat, so parents, just so they know, the big decisions we had to make were about the calendar. We're about, there's all kinds of different plans that school districts have been talking about. And so we've chosen the synchronous opt-in hybrid where you've got a virtual school and a physical school. And then for us to make a commitment, an understanding of the best practices and the expectations. Again, the expectations are basically like law, so you have to implement those. So knowing what those were and knowing how you'll implement those. Now we're waiting to get the data from parents regarding how many of you will opt into the virtual school. And then we've got some planning meetings coming up where we'll work out a lot of these details. So there's some details we don't have yet, but we're working our way through it.
We have some questions about tuition, and will we still be accepting tuition payers this year? Will it be the same rate if they choose physical or virtual? And are they allowed to participate in virtual schooling?
Yes to all. Deanna, anything you've got to add to that? But I mean, all of our discussions, we haven't had any plans to change the way we handle tuition students.
If they're talking about K through 12, and you're exactly right, nothing has changed. Preschool tuition is an entirely separate thing. They need to contact Chelsea Clark, who is our new preschool director, to answer that question.
Very good. That's a good distinction there.
We have some questions about the platform for our virtual school. We'll be using a program. What's that going to look like? And for a student, if they're going to be quote unquote in school from 8 to 3, what is a typical virtual day going to look like for a student?
So I think I'll do the typical virtual day, and then I'll let Stephanie maybe chime in on what the, about the platform and all that, because no one can do that better than her or Susan, either of them. But our hope is that a typical day won't feel that much different than it would in the physical traditional school environment. So what we do really well in the traditional physical school environment is we have a lot of transitions built in. So the students are working in centers. They've got a whole group where the teacher's presenting to them. There's one-on-one conferencing time. All those different learning modes are utilized, and they're utilized in such a way to where the child's attention span doesn't come into play. And so we want the virtual school to feel the exact same way. And we want the teacher to be in contact with the children. We know she can't do it exactly here. She can't do it exactly like they can in the traditional physical school. We want it to be as close as possible. So that's the goal for the virtual school. Now, Stephanie, talk a little bit about how the software programs we use.
Sure, Mr. LaFavors. I think that they're probably, when they mention programs, referencing other school districts are using specific learning programs to do the online learning. We're not doing that. We're actually using our Boyle County teaching staff, our teachers who may have taught in the classroom before with us. But we will be using Google Classroom, which is our primary learning management system for any kids that are second grade or above. And for our kindergartens and first, our little bitties, we're going to use a program called Seesaw that's very touch intuitive and interactive. And we will be providing our students, most of our student body with Chromebooks, but then we will have some cases that will provide iPads. And with that said, we have had some people ask questions about speech services and OT services, specials for virtual. Any student that is virtual will be provided all the same services. It may look a little different, but all of the same services that our physical school students are provided.
That's well said.
Will y'all elaborate a little bit on kind of what the virtual day will look like if we're expecting, kids at home to be tuned in from 8 to 3? Can you sort of walk us through that? I know it's different at different levels, but give us a little bit more understanding about that.
Yeah, so if you have let's say a middle school student, most likely they'll have different teachers through the day. So they'll have a first period class and a second period class and a third period class, and it'll be different teachers, just like it'll be in the physical school. I think elementary school, it depends on our numbers for one thing. If we have a very small number of students in the virtual school, it's going to look drastically different than if we have a large number. So I'm not maybe committing to how this is going to play out exactly, but because I got to see those numbers to know how it's going to play out. But the thought we have is that, if you have enough numbers to where if you have 30, 25 or 30 first grade students, they would have a teacher, and that teacher would be with them all day long. And again, they would be the ones creating those transitions from reading to math, and within reading to where the students are doing different things, just like they do at school. You know, they're going from centers to whole group. The teacher spending some one-on-one time with the child. And so all that is happening just like it happens in the physical school. A lot of this is simply dictated by the numbers. So we're giving parents the option, and we're not encouraging you to select one or the other. We're telling you to select the one that's best for you, right? We're giving you what we think are going to be two really good options. You pick the one that's best for you, and then we're going to work around that. And so by July 24th, we should know the answers to these questions. And then we start planning in tremendous detail, because then we'll know how many kids are in the cafeteria. So the question on the cafeteria, we'll be able to answer better. How many students are going to be on the bus? We'll know that answer. Exactly what these classrooms are going to look like, we'll be able to answer that question. We just don't have the data yet. What we're presenting to you today is that you have the choice as a parent, as a student. And there are we're going to create two strong options for you. And you get to choose the one that's best for you.
Thanks, Mike. Can you talk a little bit about the after-school program and when folks might be able to plan for that?
Is in charge of the after-school program, so I'll turn that question over to him. Maybe Chris is not there. Maybe he got dropped. I'm not sure. I can answer the question.
No, here I am. I'm sorry. I was having a little technical difficulties there, Mr. Lefebvre.
That's all right. That's all right.
But no, we've started building and working a plan for our after-school program. Just kind of echoing what I've heard several folks say, and I know this is, probably not some of the answers that folks want to hear. It may look differently, but it will still be a good program that will provide supervision and some extra instruction in cases for kids. We're looking at it not being at a central location, but perhaps maybe being at each individual child's home elementary location. So that may be better. We'll still have to follow all the same expectations. That would include social distancing as well as masks and other personal protective equipment. But that will be an option coming this fall for our parents and our kids.
Good answer, Chris.
Mike, I just want to reiterate, we had talked about breakfast and lunch at the beginning. I think some people may have missed that, maybe if they got to tune in late, but Katie Ellis mentioned that we will provide breakfast and lunch to physical school, and then the option will be available for pickup for virtual school as well. So for everybody listening, those will definitely be provided. Also, Mr. Lefebvre, we had a really good question about if you choose virtual school, and you talked a little bit about this, but if you choose virtual school for fall semester, but second semester, COVID is gone, we hope, or is declining, can they choose to go back into traditional school?
They absolutely can. And that's why we designed it that way, right? So you get the parent, the student, you control the choice at each of those two commitment dates. And the first commitment date is July 24th. I think the second one's December the 11th, without looking at the slide. I believe that's right. And so, yeah, the parent controls with their student, how they want to learn at those two commitment dates.
All right, great. We have gotten lots of questions, and I think it'll be helpful. I know you shared this in our staff town hall, but I think it'll be helpful for parents. Lots of questions about when they'll get their schedules, when they'll get assigned a teacher. What about back to school events? Is there a freshman orientation? Will you tell us a little bit about the timeline over the next couple of weeks so that they know what to expect?
Yeah, so the timeline, of course, the big thing that's going to happen for us over the next 2 weeks is you all are going to answer the survey, and you're going to give us the information we need. And then starting on the 27th of July, we're going to spend days digging into the information you've given us about who's riding the bus and who's doing virtual school and who needs food pickups and all these different things. And we're going to plan all that out in great detail. And then on August 3rd, our schools are going to come back in to their physical locations. The secretaries will be in the offices and the principals will be in their offices. Until then, we're working from home. And believe me, we're working, I don't think, longer hours than we would probably at school. It's crazy the number of hours. But so on August 3rd, though, we'll all be back. Central office will have a full staff back. And then at that time, I think the schools, starting on August 3rd, will have the information they need to know who the child's teacher will be and schedule pickups. All that stuff will start happening. You'll start getting information from your school, maybe leading up to August 3rd. And then on August 3rd and thereafter, all that will start to happen. Orientations and open houses, which I think will look different, but there'll be information flow from your school about that. So really, that's kind of the heartbeat of what's going to be going on over the next 5 or 6 weeks. And then from August 3rd until August 26th, we're going to have, not only will parents be picking up schedules and finding out what teacher and getting all those details lined up, but we'll have professional development for our teachers and preparing them for what we're getting ready to do. We've got planned, I don't know if it's 7 or 8 days. It's a lot of professional development. And then on August 26th, we'll come in, and I think we're going to make the strongest go at this that anybody can. I don't think there'll be anybody who will do it at a higher level than we're going to do it. I mean, I've got confidence in what we're going to do. So that will happen on August 26th, and we'll go from there.
Mike, I think this will be something really good to wrap it up with. We had one particular parent ask if we had a preference as a school district. Like, are we saying one option would be better over the other? Are we promoting virtual to help make the planning easier? Or what is our stance? And so I've heard you say it before, but will you elaborate to our families on what our stance on that is?
Yeah, so one thing, we don't want you to feel like we're pushing you into one or the other. So we want to be clear about that. I've said to my staff many times, I don't want people to feel like they're being pushed into one or the other. Probably our fear was that you'd feel like we were pushing you into the physical school, to be honest. Maybe that question makes me think maybe you feel like we're pushing into the virtual school, which we didn't think that would even be a possibility. But we don't want you to feel like you're being pushed in either direction. Now, I do think we're going to have a lot more people who will be in our physical, traditional school environment. I think that's how it's going to go. But you all are going to make your individual decisions, your individual choices. And I think that's one of the things COVID-19 is forcing us all to do. They're forcing us all to decide about a lot of things on a day-to-day basis, how we want to handle things as a family. We have to make those decisions. And so what we're saying to you is we're acknowledging that we know this is the day and time we're in. You have to make choices every day regarding this entire situation. And this is a choice we have confidence in you making. You'll make the right one for your family and for your child. And we will take the data you give us on July 24th and create 2 fantastic learning options for children. That's what we'll do. And then we'll get the details to you the 1st of August, about how that's all going to play out. We've got the big ideas sorted out today, right? We presented those to you. Some of the details you've asked about, quite frankly, we've got to wait for you to make your decisions. And then we'll plan that out. And it's going to be a great year. It's going to be a great year. It's going to be difficult at times. It's going to be tremendous opportunities for us all to grow. The students, the staff, probably the parents, we're all going to grow. And we embrace the idea of that. And so that's what I think this school year is going to look like.
All right, that was a great response. We have 2 questions that kind of will wrap up our late afternoon, evening, Mike. And the first one was, I think that, we've all thought through this. Is there a possibility that we could all have to go virtual at some time or some point in the year? Tell us your thoughts on that.
I think it's a pretty likely scenario. It's hard to know how things play out. There could be great advancements with therapeutics early fall, and then that could change everything, right? There could be a vaccine in early winter, and that could be a game changer as well. So it's hard to predict. But yeah, I'm planning for that in my mind, and in the discussions I'm having with the leaders in the district, I'm planning for the idea that we may have a classroom that's sheltering in place, a grade level, a school, in the district. All those things could happen. And we'll have to pivot as the year goes on between all those scenarios is what we're planning for. Now we're hoping that that's not what happens. Again, that the case count in Boyle County and Boyle County schools is low, and then we can get started and it's just a really smooth ride. That's what you're hoping for, but you got to plan for something else. And so we're doing that.
All right, great. Last question. We have a parent that says that before they submit the survey, is there someone that they can speak with, a district representative, or who would you direct them to, that they can talk to one-on-one to decide what's best for their family, because they do have children in different schools with different schedules and they're a working family. So is there a point of contact you would direct them to?
So I think, I think any of the people on this call, whoever you're most comfortable with, would be a great point of contact. So, you've got Stephanie Wade here, who's got children in at least 2 of the schools right now. Stephanie, am I right? You've got children in 2 schools?
Yes.
And Susan Taylor and Steve Karshner and Chris Holderman and Nicole Brown and Katie Ellis, Deanna Padgett, whoever you're most comfortable with. Chris Sloan's on the call. Bernice Bates, your school's principal. David Morris is on the call. I know Amy Bugg's new, but still yet she's got children at Woodlawn, and she's been, she's a fast learner. I can already tell that. So I think, whomever you're most comfortable with, I think any of the people on this call, they're very familiar with the planning that was gone on by the district, and they would be able to talk to you. And I'll myself up to that as well. You can email me at mike.lefavors@boyle.kyschools.us. And I get back to emails every 24 hours. If you leave me your phone number, I'll call you and we can talk about it. Now, if you know me, I'm probably not going to tell you what to do. That's just not my style, but I will tell you, maybe I can answer questions that are hard to answer in a format like this for you. But I would leave the choice for you to make. But yeah, any of the people on this call would be excellent choices, in my opinion, for that.
All right. I think that concludes the questions for tonight or this evening. We had lots of great questions. Lastly, Susan, I didn't know if you would like to show them the website. And then I know also, did we give them the link and direct them to the form that they'll be submitting?
Yeah, I could show the site real quick. We're just trying to get some publishing settings going on it.
Email me at Mike.
Okay, you don't feel no pressure. We can put that in the Facebook post and on social media if we need to. It's no big deal at all. I just was thinking for the parents that you're listening, Susan Taylor, myself, Mike, several of us have developed lots of materials for a website, and Susan's got that right there. And it has all the information that you guys would need. It has the parent survey that you're going to take. Susan worked very hard on that. She is a Google form guru. It has information for the virtual school and the physical school. You'll see there on the landing page that there's a comparison chart. I know lots of your comments said you weren't really sure what to choose. Well, this is just a real quick snippet of the qualities of each of the choices. So. Otherwise, do you have anything else you'd like to add, Mr. LaFavors?
No, I just think, we really need you to take the survey. I mean, honestly, we're going to treat it like the basic needs work we do, where we're seeking out 100% of our parents to take the survey. So if you don't take it, we're going to come looking for you. I mean, I hate to say it that way. We're going to call you. And so really just take the survey would really help us out. The quicker you can do that. If we can get a snapshot of 50% of our parents this, next week, then we can begin planning sooner. I mean, it's just really good. So if you would just take, the survey, I took it myself. I don't even have a child in the district anymore. All my children are grown, but I took it just to see how it works. And then you're talking about, it's 6-7 minutes. It's not long. And it gives us everything we need for our planning. And so I encourage you to take that as quickly as possible.
All right, Mike, or Mr. LaFavors, I don't think we have any more questions, so.
All right, well, once again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. My promise to you is it's going to be a great school year. Doesn't mean it's not going to be trying at times, but it's going to be a powerful learning experience for your students and for us. And I appreciate your partnership, and reach out to me or any of my team at any time. We're here to help you. Thank you very much.